The trash bag my daughter threw at my feet was ripped down one side, and a stiff corner of paper had punched through the black plastic as if somebody had searched it before she handed it to me. "Take your trash," Samantha said. The garage lock clicked behind her. A second later, the motor groaned overhead, and the door started coming down. The torn plastic scraped across my knuckles when I caught the bag before it rolled under my suitcase. Damp cardboard pressed against my shin. The whole thing smelled of lemon garage cleaner, old paper, and the cedar blocks Ruth used to keep in our closets. Blake stood just inside the narrowing doorway with a key between two fingers. My guest suite key. He had already taken it off the ring. "We agreed this was temporary, Mark," my son-in-law said. "6 weeks ago, you said I could stay until I found somewhere permanent." Blake slipped the key into his pocket. 6 weeks is temporary. Samantha folded her arms. At 35, she had her mother's chin, and my habit of pressing her tongue against her cheek when she wanted a conversation over. "Dad, please don't make this uglier than it is." At 59, after almost 3 decades building Ellison Family Care with Ruth, I knew people often said please when they wanted credit for cruelty. I looked at the suitcase, the torn bag, and the garage door settling against the concrete with a rubber thump. "Where's the blue box?" I asked. Samantha blinked. "What blue box?" "The one from the guest closet." "Ruth's papers. Her flannel shirt was in there too." Blake answered before she could. "Anything with company letterhead stays here. Ruth's shirt doesn't have company letterhead." "Then I'm sure Samantha packed it." My daughter glanced toward the closed garage door. I sorted everything. That word stayed with me. Sorted. As if 33 years of marriage could be divided into keep, discard, and company property beside the lawnmower. "Open the garage," I said. Samantha's shoulders rose slightly. "Dad, I want the box." Blake stepped closer, not enough to touch me. His voice dropped into the careful tone he used in meetings when he wanted everyone to believe a decision had already been made. "You've got your personal belongings. Finance records belong to the corporation. We don't need another misunderstanding." Another misunderstanding. 6 weeks earlier, I had wired $700,000 into the company Ruth and I built from 2 borrowed desks and a used station wagon. Samantha had said a public fraud fight could kill the stock sale, hurt the staff, and stain Ruth's name. I sold the mortgage-free house where we raised her to get that money. Now Blake was worried about folders. Not whether I had a bed. Not whether the cheap suitcase beside me could hold everything I owned. Folders. "I'll come back for the blue box," I said. "No," Blake replied. "You won't." Samantha looked at him, then at me. She said nothing. That was my answer. I lifted the suitcase into my car and put the trash bag on the passenger floor. The plastic crackled against the console. Something heavy shifted inside, but I left it alone. If there was one thing I wasn't going to do, it was stand in my daughter's driveway digging through garbage while her husband watched from the window. The motel was less than 10 minutes away, with outside doors and an ice machine beside a soda machine. I paid for 3 nights. The clerk didn't ask about the torn trash bag. Inside the room, the air conditioner rattled hard enough to make the framed print above the bed tremble. The carpet smelled faintly of bleach and something sweet underneath it. I set the bag on the desk and pulled the plastic apart. Ruth's red flannel shirt was on top. For a moment, I just held it. One cuff still missed its second button. I had promised to fix it the winter before she died. My thumb found the loose thread. Under the shirt were old property tax folders, pharmacy receipts, a folder from our accountant, and a stack of papers held together with a rusted clip. Most had dates from years ago. One envelope did not. White, crisp, bank logo in the corner. My name showed through the address window. I tore it open with my finger. The first page was a savings account statement for Mark Ellison. The balance was just under $700,000. I read it twice, then a third time, slower. 700,000. The same amount Blake had told me was gone. The same amount Samantha had watched me replace from the sale of my house. A folded piece of yellow paper slid from behind the statement and landed near my wrist. The handwriting was blocky, written with a black pen. If they say you moved the money, ask who linked this account to the company 9 days before your access was restored. No signature. I stared at the word linked. I didn't know exactly what it meant in a bank system, but I knew dates. Ruth and I had run a business long enough to know that when two events tell a story, their order matters. My phone rang on the desk. Blake. I let it ring twice before answering. What? His voice came through smooth and low. Did Samantha put any finance material in your things? Not, hello. Not, where are you staying? Not, did you find Ruth's shirt? Some old tax papers, I said. Personal stuff. A pause. Small, but there. If you see anything with Ellison Family Care on it, don't throw it away, Blake said. It needs to come back. My eyes stayed on the bank statement. The $700,000 I repaid. You said the original money was gone. Correct. He answered too quickly for a man being asked about $700,000. Gone where? We've covered this, Mark. Humor me. The air conditioner kicked off, and the room became so quiet I could hear the faint buzz from the phone speaker. Blake exhaled. Funds were transferred using your credentials to an outside account. You denied it. Samantha chose not to involve law enforcement because she wanted to protect you. You made the company whole. That's the end of it. I ran one finger along my printed name on the statement. Then why are you calling about papers? Because company records are company records. Don't turn housekeeping into another accusation. I didn't accuse you of anything. Another pause. Good, Blake said. Keep it that way. The call ended. I searched the bank's official number on the statement, then checked it against the number printed on an old debit card in my wallet. Same bank. Same customer service line. The first employee transferred me to fraud. The second made me repeat old addresses, my birth date, and details only I should know. Finally, a woman named Carla came back on the line. Mr. Ellison, I can confirm there is a savings account under your name, she said. I can't discuss the full opening application over the phone. What's the balance? Carla gave me a figure within a few dollars of the statement on the desk. My fingers tightened around the receiver. When was it opened? Late January. I did not open that account. Her tone changed. Not warmer, just more exact. Then I need to place an identity dispute restriction and document your claim. You'll also need to submit a written request for account opening and transaction records. I can explain that process. I wrote on the motel notepad, pressing hard enough to groove the paper. Before we finished, I asked, can you tell me what phone number was used when the account was opened? I can only provide limited information at this stage, Carla said. I can read the masked callback number associated with verification. She read the last 4 digits. My pen stopped. Those numbers belonged to a line I had dialed hundreds of times before I left daily operations at Ellison Family Care. Not Samantha's office, not reception, finance. The bank verification line Blake took control of after he became chief financial officer. I opened my old contact list and found the number. Same last 4 digits. Then I looked at the note again. 9 days before your access was restored. For the first time since Samantha accused me of taking the money, I stopped asking myself how I could prove I hadn't done it. A different question had taken its place. Who needed the bank to believe I had? I left the bank statement on the motel desk and pulled my old allegation folder from the bottom of my suitcase. Blake had given it to me in February, back when he still called me Mr. Ellison in front of company counsel and Dad when he wanted something signed. The folder was gray, thick enough to bow at the spine, with a white label that read, Confidential, in red block letters. I remembered the dry scrape of it across Samantha's conference table. That afternoon came back in pieces. Blake had opened the folder and turned it toward me. Your old banking profile was restored, he said. Then, a personal savings account was added as an external payee. The next day, $700,000 left operating reserve. Samantha sat across from me with both hands around a paper coffee cup she never drank from. Why would you do this to me? She asked. Not. Could this be wrong? Not. Dad, did you do this? Why would you do this to me? I stared at the transaction printout. My name appeared beside the user field, Below it sat a transfer amount that made my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. I didn't move that money. Blake leaned back. His cufflinks touched the table with a faint click. Then somebody used credentials assigned to you. Credentials I haven't used in years. That doesn't make them imaginary. Samantha looked down at the cup. Blake. He softened his voice immediately. I'm not trying to make this worse. That was how he did it. He put a blade on the table, then spoke like the man offering bandages. I turned another page. Call the bank. Call whoever you need to call. Blake's mouth tightened. And tell them what? That a founder may have taken reserve funds while we're under diligence? Tell them the truth. The truth is exactly what we're trying to establish. Samantha finally looked at me. Dad, if this turns into a formal fraud investigation right now, the buyer has to know. So? Her fingers squeezed the coffee cup until the lid shifted. So we have more than 180 people depending on this company. There it was. Not me. The company. Ruth had loved that company too. She knew caregivers by name. She once spent Christmas Eve driving replacement gloves and disposable gowns across 3 counties because a supplier missed a shipment. Samantha knew exactly which memory to use. Blake closed the folder. We can keep this contained, he said. No police report, no public accusation, no board spectacle. You restore what left reserve, and we document it as a private restitution pending final reconciliation. I stared at him. You want me to pay money I didn't take? I want the company made whole. And if I refuse? Blake didn't answer. Samantha did. Then we can't control what happens next. The sentence had been quiet. That made it worse. Back in the motel, the air conditioner kicked on again. I rubbed my thumb along the gray folder's edge until a paper cut started burning. They had called it a choice. It hadn't been one. The next documents were the private restitution agreement and a handwritten note from Samantha asking me to sign before Friday afternoon. Her handwriting leaned slightly right, the same way it had on birthday cards when she was a teenager. Dad, please don't let this become the thing that destroys what Mom built. I had read that line more times than the agreement itself. At the meeting on Friday, I pushed the unsigned pages back toward her. I don't have $700,000 sitting and checking. Samantha's voice stayed level. You have the house. The room had gone so still, I could hear the ceiling vent clicking. My house? It's mortgage-free. Your mother's ashes sat on that mantel for 8 months. Samantha closed her eyes for a second. Dad, I know. No, you know the address. Blake stepped in before she answered. Nobody is asking you to give the house away. You're asking me to sell it to cover money I didn't take. We're asking you to protect the business while this gets resolved. I looked at Samantha. She did not tell him to stop. That was the moment I signed. Not because Blake convinced me. Because my daughter sat 3 feet away and let her mother's company stand between us like a hostage. The house went on the market fast. Cash buyer. No mortgage contingency. I had enough experience around property and contracts to know the price was fair for a quick close, even if the timing wasn't. On closing day, the title office smelled of burnt coffee and printer toner. A young woman slid the settlement statement toward me and pointed where I needed to initial. Sale price, $835,000. After costs and adjustments, a little over $807,000 landed in my account. 3 days later, I wired exactly $700,000 to Ellison Family Care. Samantha called within an hour. Dad, I saw it. I stood in my empty kitchen with my phone against my ear. Without furniture, her voice bounced off the walls. Good. You can stay with us while you figure out the next place. For how long? As long as you need. I looked at the pale rectangle on the dining room wall where Ruth's china cabinet had stood. Say that again. Samantha hesitated. A few months. Whatever makes sense. 6 weeks later, Blake took back the guest suite key. I pulled the closing statement from the folder and laid it beside the savings account statement from the trash bag. Then, I took out a motel notepad. On the first line I wrote, Ellison Family Care to account in my name, $700,000. On the second, my house proceeds to Ellison Family Care, $700,000. I read both lines aloud. Same number. Different money. The company had lost $700,000. Then I had given the company another $700,000. And the first $700,000 was still sitting in an account carrying my name. My chair creaked when I leaned back. If Blake's story was true, I had stolen the first amount, hidden it, sold my house, repaid the company with completely different money, and then left the stolen funds untouched. Possible? Sure. People had done dumber things. But that wasn't the story Blake had told. His folder said, I restored my dormant access, added my personal account as an external payee, then moved the money. In that order, I searched my old email for security notices from Ellison Family Care. Most were password warnings and system updates I had ignored after leaving the board. Then, one subject line appeared. Banking access restored. I opened it. The date was February 11th. The message said my dormant business banking user had been reactivated. Below that sat a request field. Requested by CFO Office. I read it again. CFO Office. Not Mark Ellison. Not account owner request. Not founder verification. CFO Office. Blake's office. That still didn't prove he had done anything wrong. A chief financial officer could restore a former authorized user for plenty of legitimate reasons. Maybe someone needed an old approval chain. Maybe an administrator had used his office as the request source. But the accusation folder on my desk said I had restored access myself. Those were not the same thing. My phone lit up with a message from Samantha. Where are you staying? I stared at it. For 6 weeks, I had slept 20 feet from her kitchen. She knew how I took my coffee, what medication bottle sat beside my bed, and which shirt I wore when I couldn't sleep. Now she wanted an address. I typed, I'm fine. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No second message came. The room seemed smaller after that. I set the phone down and returned to the note from the trash bag. Ask who linked this account to the company 9 days before your access was restored. The bank had already confirmed the account existed in late January. My company access came back on February 11th, but I still did not know when the account became an external payee inside Ellison Family Care's banking system. That was the missing date, and there was only one person outside Blake's office who might remember it. Denise Harper had been our controller before she resigned. Blake had mentioned her more than once after the money disappeared, always the same way. Denise downloaded records. Denise left abruptly. Denise was bitter about changes in finance. He never accused her outright. He didn't need to. I opened her contact and typed one sentence. Do you remember when that external payee was added? The reply came less than a minute later. Yes. Then another message appeared. I remember because that was the date I stopped trusting the ledger. Denise's second message stayed on my screen. I remember because that was the date I stopped trusting the ledger. Before I could answer, Blake called. His name covered Denise's message, and for a second, I watched the phone vibrate against the motel desk. The plastic case rattled beside the bank statement. Ruth's red flannel shirt lay folded near my elbow, one cuff hanging over the edge. I answered. Mark, Blake said, I need you to send me the restitution agreement you kept. You already have the original. I'm cleaning up duplicate files. You called me about finance papers last night. Now you're cleaning duplicates? His breath touched the microphone. I'm trying to keep records where they belong. Then email me my copy. A chair squeaked on his end. You don't need another copy. I signed it. And you received one. It may be in the things Samantha packed. That landed. Blake's voice lost a little polish. Don't start calling former employees about company documents. I looked at Denise's message still waiting beneath his call. Why would I do that? Because Denise Harper downloaded records before she quit. We had concerns about that. What concerns? She left immediately after the transfer issue. Not an accusation, just enough dirt placed beside her name. Did she steal something? I didn't say that. Did she falsify anything? Mark, this is exactly what I mean. You're turning housekeeping into an investigation because you don't like how the restitution ended. How did it end? A pause. With the company whole, My knuckles tightened around the phone. Send me the agreement, Blake. I'll see what counsel says. He ended the call. I sat still until the screen went dark, then opened Denise's message again. Can you meet? Her answer came almost immediately. 1 hour. Mercer Accounting. Ask for me. Mercer Accounting occupied the second floor of a brick office building, 20 minutes from the motel. I drove with the gray allegation folder on the passenger seat and the bank statement inside my jacket. Rain had left a wet shine on the parking lot, but the air smelled mostly of hot asphalt and the exhaust from a delivery truck idling near the curb. Denise met me beside a copier room. She had cut her hair shorter since Ellison Family Care, and she wore reading glasses on a chain. No hug. No hand on my shoulder. Her first words were, "What date did they say you added the payee?" After my access was restored. What date? February 11th. Denise pointed toward a small conference room. Start with dates. The room held a round table, 4 chairs, and a humming mini refrigerator under the counter. She closed the door and sat across from me. I opened Blake's allegation folder. He said my old business banking profile was restored. Then I added a personal savings account as an external payee. Then I moved the money. Denise held out her hand. Show me. I pushed the page across. Her glasses slid lower while she read. One fingernail tapped the sequence printed beneath my name. This is what they gave you? Yes. Did anybody show you the actual payee enrollment record? No. The administrator log? No. The beneficiary exception? I don't even know what that is. Denise leaned back. Then they showed you a story about the system. Not the system. I let that sit. What did you see? Her mouth tightened before she answered. On February 2nd, I was reconciling new beneficiaries against approved vendor and payroll lists. Your name appeared on an exception report. My name? Mark Ellison. Personal savings account. The last 4 digits matched the statement you texted me this morning. I pulled the bank statement from my jacket and laid it down. Denise checked the digits. Same account, she said. My chair scraped the floor when I shifted forward. February 2nd. Yes. My user was disabled then. I know. How? Because I checked. The mini refrigerator clicked off. Without its hum, I could hear paper feeding through the copier outside. Denise reached into her purse and removed a narrow spiral notebook with a bent cover. I didn't take many databases home, she said. I wrote exceptions down when I worked them. Date. Item. Who I asked. What response I got. She opened to a page marked with a yellow tab. February 2nd was written near the top. Beside it, Ellison beneficiary, user disabled, admin path, review. That notebook proves you wrote something, I said. Not that the company record says it. Correct. Her answer came so fast it almost relieved me. Then she took out her phone. I did one thing It showed part of a computer monitor. The edge of an exception window. My name, the account ending, and a date. February 2nd. The image was crooked. A reflection from an overhead light washed out one corner. Why take this? Because when I asked Finance Administration who enrolled it, my access to that screen changed before lunch. Who changed it? I couldn't prove that then. I still can't. So this is a lead. Yes. Not proof. Denise nodded. If you want proof, preserve the original admin log. 9 days. The words from the trash bag note came back exactly. Ask who linked this account to the company 9 days before your access was restored. I pulled out my security email. February 11th, I said. Requested by CFO office. Denise placed her phone beside it. February 2nd, February 11th. The accusation Blake had handed me said I restored access and then added my account. But the account had already been linked to company banking 9 days before my user came back to life. For the first time, the problem was not that Blake's story seemed strange. The sequence could not happen the way he had described it. Who could add a payee while my user was disabled? I asked. An administrator with the right permission. Blake? Possibly. Samantha? Possibly. Through approval channels. Who did it? Denise closed her notebook. That's the question the original log answers. Not me. I looked at her for a long second. Blake had pointed me toward Denise, as if she were a loose wire hanging out of the wall. Downloaded records. Quit suddenly. Bitter former controller. Yet every time I tried to make her hand me a conclusion, she pushed me back toward records I could verify. What happened the next day? I asked. Nothing I could see. And after my access came back? Denise glanced at the allegation folder. February 12th, operating reserve dropped by 700,000. The number still had weight even after hearing it so many times. Where did it go? To the payee, ending in those same 4 digits. My savings account. That's what the ledger showed. Do you have that ledger? No. Photo? No. I wrote the reconciliation entry in my notebook, but you need the original ledger and bank transfer record. Don't let anybody tell you my notes are enough. I flipped to the next page she indicated. February 12th, reserve transfer, 700,000, same account ending. A question had been bothering me since the motel. Why didn't you call me? Denise looked down at the table. I called Samantha. The room changed without making a sound. When? Before you signed the restitution agreement. My fingers stopped on the notebook. What did you tell her? That the dates did not support the sequence finance was using to accuse you. I recommended an independent review before anyone asked you for restitution. Did she answer? Denise unlocked her phone again. I don't have the original email. It stayed in the company system. But when my access started disappearing, I photographed the message thread because I wanted a record that I had raised the issue. She turned the screen toward me. The subject line read, Mark Ellison Transfer Chronology. Independent review recommended. Below. Denise's message was part of Samantha's reply. Keep this inside finance for now. Dad signs Friday. We cannot blow everything up before then. My eyes stayed on the words Dad signs Friday. The copier outside stopped. Somewhere down the hall, a man laughed, then a door shut. I read Samantha's sentence again. Friday was the house closing? Denise shook her head. No. My throat felt dry. Then what was I signing? She looked straight at me. The restitution agreement. I did not move. Denise slid her phone back across the table. She wanted your signature before anyone opened the dates. You knew before I signed, didn't you? Samantha said nothing. Not a cough. Not the rustle of papers. Just the faint hum of a vent in her office and the electronic hiss between us. I stood beside the motel desk with Denise's photographed email open on my phone. The words sat there in black type. Dad signs, Friday. I did not tell Samantha I had seen them. Before February 20th, I said. Did Denise tell you the beneficiary dates did not match Blake's story? My daughter finally spoke. Where are you getting this? That isn't an answer. Dad, if Denise is feeding you pieces of internal records, you need to understand she left under difficult circumstances. She told you the dates were wrong. She raised a control exception. The phrase came out smooth, practiced. I looked at Ruth's flannel shirt folded beside the gray allegation folder. One loose thread, still curled from the missing cuff button. What's the difference? I asked. A control exception means something should be reviewed. It doesn't mean you were cleared. Did you review it? We were in the middle of a transaction. That wasn't my question. Samantha exhaled. We had a buyer asking for updated numbers every day. Financing was lined up. Blake believed the transfer evidence was solid. Denise didn't. Denise didn't have all the information. Neither did I. That stopped her. A pen clicked on her end. Once, twice. Dad, Samantha said, you keep treating this like somebody walked into your house and took money from a drawer. It wasn't that simple. My house was exactly what paid for it. You made a restitution payment. I sold the house your mother and I owned because you told me the company could collapse if I didn't. That's not what I said. You told me employees could lose their jobs. You told me the buyer could walk. You told me Ruth's company could be dragged through a fraud investigation. All of those things were true. And Denise told you the dates didn't fit. She said they needed review. I pressed my thumb against the desk edge until the laminate bit my skin. When were you planning to tell me? Samantha's voice got quieter. After closing. The answer was so clean, I almost missed what it meant. After the company sold? Yes. And then what? We would have had time. Real time. No buyer over our shoulder. No financing deadline. To do what? To sort it out. I looked at the bank statement carrying my name and nearly $700,000. You already took $700,000 from my house. You were going to get it back. My hand stopped moving. From who? Samantha did not answer. From who, Sam? We would have worked it out. That isn't a person. Dad, please, was Blake going to write me a check? Were you? I never said you were falsely accused. You just said Denise warned you before I signed. That does not erase what the system showed. What system? Another pause. Blake's version of one. That was the answer she would not say. Samantha's voice sharpened. You're taking one concern and building a whole story around it. No. I'm asking why my daughter let me sell my home while she knew the story used against me had a hole in it. You had assets. The words came fast. Too fast. Neither of us spoke after that. A refrigerator compressor clicked on beneath the motel counter. I stared at the wall. You had assets, I repeated. That isn't what I meant. Yes, it is. Dad, the company had a limited window. Your house was paid off. You were not going to be homeless. I looked at the suitcase, still half unpacked beside the bed. Where do you think I'm calling you from? Her breath caught. Where are you? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Then it should have mattered before Blake took my key. Blake shouldn't have handled it that way. But he did. And you threw the bag. That was after you accused us of stealing company documents. I asked for your mother's shirt. Silence. I almost gave her an easier path. Almost. Instead, I said, here is what happens now. Her voice went guarded. What do you mean? You call the board. Tell them. Denise raised a problem with the dates before I signed the restitution agreement. Ask for an independent review. Withdraw every statement that says I took that money as established fact. You can't dictate board procedure. I'm not. It sounds like you are. I'm telling you what I need to see before I file a formal identity dispute and challenge the account opened in my name. The pen on her end stopped clicking. What account? There it was. Not shock. A careful question. I glanced at the torn trash bag crumpled beside the desk. The one you packed for me. I packed a lot of things. Then you won't mind if I keep them. Dad, what exactly was in that bag? Before I could answer, another voice came through, farther from the phone. Blake. Put him on speaker, Samantha said. Blake, not now. Put him on speaker, Sam. A second later, the sound changed. Blake spoke clearly. Mark, this has gone far enough. Has it? You made a voluntary restitution. Now you're contacting a former controller who removed internal information and trying to manufacture doubt around a completed matter. Completed? The company was made whole. Then why do you care what was in my trash bag? A short breath came through the speaker. Blake recovered. Because Samantha may have accidentally given you corporate records. So you know there were corporate records in it? I know your room contained old files. You searched my room? Samantha cut in. Dad, stop twisting words. I'm asking questions. Blake's tone flattened. You're laying groundwork to reverse a payment you made after acknowledging responsibility. I stood straighter. I never acknowledged taking the money. You acknowledged that the company had suffered a loss connected to your credentials. That is not the same sentence. It was understood. By who? Everyone in the room. Samantha? My daughter did not answer. Samantha? Yes, she said. I understood you were accepting responsibility. For stealing? For making the company whole. Those are not the same thing either, Blake interrupted. This word game is over. No, I said. It just started. Then I ended the call. Less than an hour later, an email arrived from Ellison Family Care's outside counsel. The subject line read, Preservation and clarification of prior restitution. Attached was a signed statement from Samantha. I opened it. The first paragraph described the transfer investigation. The second said I had voluntarily made restitution. Then came the line that made me sit down. Mark Ellison acknowledged that he had temporarily taken company funds and agreed to restore them to avoid disruption to the pending transaction. I read it twice. No, I had never said those words. Not in the conference room. Not at the title office. Not on the phone. Below the paragraph sat Samantha's signature. Her real signature. I knew the long sweep of the S and the narrow loop in the final A. I had watched her sign school forms, her first apartment lease, and the paperwork when Ruth transferred voting shares to her. The statement had been signed that afternoon, after our call. After I gave her one clean chance to ask for a review, my phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. I hope you understand why I had to protect the company. I placed her signed statement beside the handwritten note from the trash bag. One said the dates were wrong. The other said I had confessed. Both could not survive the same records. I opened the contact Denise had given me for an attorney who handled financial disputes and corporate investigations. When the receptionist answered, I gave my name. What is this regarding? She asked. I was accused of stealing $700,000 from my own company, I said. I sold my house to pay it back. Now I have evidence the account was linked before they restored my access, and my daughter just put a confession in writing that I never made. The receptionist's keyboard stopped clicking. Have you altered or forwarded any original records? No. Good. Keep them exactly as they are. I glanced at the torn black plastic on the floor. For once, I said, I plan to. Before the call ended, another email notification appeared. This one came from Blake. Subject: Final opportunity to resolve internally. I did not open it. Not yet. Blake's email stayed unopened until the attorney called me back. Her name was Laura Chen, and the first thing she said was, before you tell me what you think happened, tell me what you can prove. I sat at the motel desk with Samantha's signed statement on one side and the torn trash bag on the floor beside my chair. The air conditioner rattled every few minutes, blowing cold air across the bank papers until I weighed them down with the motel Bible. I can prove an account exists under my name, I said. I can prove I did not open it. I can prove my old company access was restored after that account had already been linked as a payee. I can prove my daughter was warned about the dates before I signed restitution. Laura's keyboard clicked through the speaker. Can you prove who opened the account? No. Can you prove who enrolled the payee? Not yet. Can you prove who authorized the transfer? Not yet. Good. That word caught me. Good? It means we do not pretend evidence says more than it says. Preserve every original. Do not alter files. Do not write on statements. Do not forward screenshots through 10 different accounts. And do not sign anything Blake Reed sends you. My eyes moved to his unopened email. He already sent something. Then open it while I am on the phone. The message was short. Blake called it a final opportunity to resolve the matter internally. Attached was an affidavit stating that the savings account had been established for my benefit and that I had understood the company's transfer as funds under my control. Near the bottom, another sentence waited. I acknowledge that the transfer authorization previously executed by me was valid. I read that line aloud. Laura stopped typing. Do you remember signing a transfer authorization? No. Do you have a copy? No. Has anyone shown you the original? No. Then do not argue about whether it is forged. Ask them to preserve it. I rubbed the edge of my thumb where the trash bag had cut me. So what happens now? We separate two things. Your identity dispute with the bank and your dispute with the company. The bank gets a written request with proof of identity and the fraud documentation they require. The company gets formal notice that you deny opening the account, deny enrolling it as a beneficiary, and deny authorizing the transfer. Will that stop the sale? I cannot promise what it will do to the transaction. That company has more than 180 employees, and your daughter has now signed a statement saying you confessed to something you say you did not do. The sentence stayed between us. Laura's voice lowered. You can protect employees without agreeing to carry someone else's conduct under your name. By noon, she had sent me instructions. I completed the bank's identity theft forms, attached identification, signed the fraud declaration, and mailed the required copies by track delivery. The branch manager also accepted a duplicate packet and stamped my receipt. No dramatic confrontation followed, just paper, a lot of it. 2 days later, Blake called again. "You hired a lawyer," he said. I asked one some questions. "You filed a fraud dispute." "Yes." His silence lasted long enough for me to hear office noise behind him. A printer. Someone speaking down a hallway. "Mark, you need to understand what you are doing. I am asking the bank, who opened an account in my name. The account was established for your benefit. Send me the opening documents. We can deal with that internally. Send me the transfer authorization you said I signed." Blake breathed out through his nose. "Counsel is gathering records. Then you should have no trouble preserving them." His voice turned flat. "Sign the affidavit I sent. It clarifies that the account was connected to you with your knowledge. We can resolve the rest without dragging Samantha through this." There it was again. Samantha as the price of asking a question. "I am not signing it. You are creating a record that may damage the company." "No. I am correcting one. You made restitution. I paid the company. I did not confess to theft. That distinction is convenient now. So is an authorization nobody will show me." He went quiet. Then Blake said, "We already have your transfer authorization. Preserve the original." Laura sent formal notice that afternoon to Ellison Family Care's outside counsel and the board's audit committee. The letter said exactly what I could stand behind. I denied opening the savings account. I denied authorizing its enrollment as an external beneficiary. I denied initiating the $700,000 transfer. I disputed Samantha's statement that I had admitted taking company funds. The notice requested preservation of beneficiary enrollment records, user access records, finance administration logs, company email archives, transfer records, my alleged authorization, and documents concerning the treatment of the missing funds during the pending stock sale. Laura copied me after it went out. "Now we wait for records," she said. Waiting turned out to have its own noise. The motel ice machine crashed every few hours. At night, trucks braked on the highway beyond the parking lot. Days passed. Then another week. Samantha sent one text. "Please stop before this becomes something none of us can undo." I did not answer. Instead, I moved into a furnished one-bedroom rental. Ruth's flannel shirt went into the top drawer. The trash bag went into a clean storage bin exactly as I had received it. 3 weeks after the bank accepted my written request, Laura called. "They produced the account opening and transaction records available to you as the identity theft claimant," she said. "I want you to read them before I tell you what I notice." The packet arrived through a secure link. My name was everywhere. My date of birth, my social security number, an old address. Enough truth to build a convincing lie. But the recovery email was not mine. The masked callback number matched the finance office line. The mailing contact pattern used the company office address for notices I had never received. A device identifier appeared in the application history. Laura warned me not to guess who owned it. "What does this prove?" I asked. "It supports that the account was not opened through your ordinary personal contact information," she said. "It does not prove Blake opened it. Yet." "Mark. I know. Dates first. Conclusions later." Good. One transaction record mattered more than the rest. On February 12th, $700,000 arrived from Ellison Family Care's operating reserve. No withdrawal by me followed, no transfer back to the company. The money sat. My house money had arrived at Ellison Family Care weeks later, as a completely separate payment. Laura told me to leave the secure originals where they were, and keep only the access receipt. The next development did not come from us. Ellison Family Care's bank contacted the company about the disputed outgoing transfer. Because my identity theft claim now challenged the receiving account and the original transfer, the company had to answer questions about who approved the payment and how the beneficiary had been enrolled. Laura called me late that afternoon. "Company counsel has responded to our preservation notice." I stood at the rental kitchen counter, one hand against the cool laminate. "And?" The audit committee is opening an independent review. I said nothing. The buyer has paused diligence, Laura continued. The stock purchase documents require disclosure of material financial control issues. Between your formal denial, the bank inquiry, and Samantha's statement, company counsel could not treat this as a closed family matter anymore. Ruth's company, 180 employees. Samantha's deal. For a moment, the old urge returned. Fix it quietly. Take the loss. Keep the roof standing for everybody else. Then I remembered my suitcase on the driveway. Who hired the reviewer? The audit committee. Outside counsel is coordinating document access. They may ask you for records you control, but you will not get unrestricted access to company files. Fine. They have already sent their first production request. Laura paused. What did they ask for? 2 transactions separately. Paper rustled on her end. She read the first line, original $700,000 transfer. Then the second, Mark Ellison, $700,000 restitution. I closed my eyes and pressed my palm harder against the counter. For months, Blake had treated those amounts as if one erased the other. Now somebody outside the family had put them on 2 different lines. Laura spoke again. Mark, there is one more request. What? The original transfer authorization Blake says you signed. The reviewer did not ask me what I thought happened. That was the first thing I liked about her. Her name was Miriam Cole, and when Laura and I joined the factual update by video, Miriam had 3 binders open in front of her, and a yellow legal pad covered in dates. She worked for the forensic firm hired by Ellison Family Care's audit committee. Company counsel was on the call. So was Samantha. Blake joined from his office. Miriam looked into the camera. My job is not to decide who is a good father, a good daughter, or a good executive, she said. I am reconstructing transactions and access events. If a fact is outside that scope, I will say so. Blake gave a thin smile. That is exactly what I have been asking for. Nobody answered him. Laura had warned me before the call that I would not receive the firm's full work papers. I would hear the findings tied to the allegations against me, and I could respond to records involving my identity or the money I had paid. That was enough. Miriam started with February 2nd. The external beneficiary, ending in the same 4 digits as Mr. Ellison's disputed savings account, was enrolled in the company banking system on February 2nd. My fingers tightened around a pen. She continued. The enrollment did not occur through Mr. Ellison's dormant user profile. That profile remained disabled until February 11th. Blake leaned toward his camera. Legacy administrators could enroll beneficiaries for multiple users. That does not establish misconduct. Miriam did not look away from her notes. I did not say it did. Then the distinction matters, Blake said. It does. So does this one. The enrollment request originated through a chief financial officer administrative path. The room in my rental seemed to shrink around my laptop. Miriam brought up a timeline. February 2nd. Beneficiary. Enrolled. February 11th. My dormant access restored. February 12th. $700,000 transferred from company reserve. The accusation Blake had placed in front of me months earlier said I had been restored first, then added my personal account, then sent company money into it. That sequence was not merely incomplete. It was wrong. Laura's voice came through beside me. Miriam, has your team located the original narrative used in the restitution review? Yes. And does it state that Mr. Ellison restored access and enrolled the payee himself? It states that his access was restored and that a beneficiary associated with him was subsequently used. Some internal summaries go further and imply he enrolled it personally. The system records do not support that order of events. I did not move. For months, I had been arguing with a story. Now the system itself had refused to tell it. Samantha broke the silence. Could Dad still have known about the account before his access was restored? Miriam nodded once. Yes. The chronology does not answer knowledge by itself. My daughter pressed her lips together. Even then, she wanted one small door left open. Miriam moved to the money. A second document appeared. Transaction 1, she said. $700,000 moved from Ellison Family Care operating reserve into the disputed savings account on February 12th. Then another line. Transaction 2. Several weeks later, Mr. Ellison wired $700,000 from proceeds traceable to the sale of his residence into Ellison Family Care. Blake shifted in his chair. Miriam continued. These are separate funds. We found no transaction showing the original $700,000 returned from the disputed account to Ellison Family Care before Mr. Ellison's payment. 2 lines. That was all. 2 lines on a screen, and suddenly the thing that had been done to me looked different. The company lost $700,000. I sold my house and replaced it. The original money remained outside the company. They got paid twice. A dry sound came out of my throat before I realized I had spoken. Laura glanced toward me on her screen. Mark? They made the company whole with my house, I said. And the first money was still sitting there. Miriam answered carefully. That is what the transaction records show. Blake cut in. The account was associated with Mark. If he retained the funds, then the company being restored is not double payment. It is recovery from the responsible party. I looked at him. Then show where I touched the first money. His jaw tightened. Miriam raised one hand. We have found no withdrawal, transfer, or spending activity by Mr. Ellison from that savings account. Blake leaned back. For once, he had nothing polished ready. The next document hurt more. Miriam said the legal hold had preserved the company mail archive. Denise's warning email had been recovered from the server, along with Samantha's reply. No screenshot now. No notebook. Original company email records. Miriam read the relevant portion. Denise had written that the beneficiary enrollment predated my restored user access, and that the dates did not support the conclusion that I initiated the setup. She recommended an independent review before restitution was requested from me. Samantha's reply followed. Keep this inside finance for now. Dad signs Friday. We cannot blow everything up before then. My daughter's face did not change much on the screen. Her hand moved once, reaching for a glass, then stopped before touching it. Miriam said, the Friday referenced here was February 20th. That matches the private restitution agreement Mr. Ellison signed. It was not the later real estate closing. Samantha spoke quietly. I have never denied receiving Denise's concern. You denied that I had reason to question the accusation, I said. Laura touched her pen against the desk, a small reminder not to turn the call into a family fight. Samantha looked toward my square on the screen. I believed finance had more complete evidence than Denise did. Miriam answered before I could. That belief is outside my scope. The email record establishes only that the chronology concern was raised before the restitution agreement. Facts. Nothing more. They were doing enough damage without anyone decorating them. Miriam moved to a set of acquisition planning files. Her tone stayed even. We also identified a draft post-closing cash instruction prepared from within finance. It contemplated moving funds from the disputed savings account after the acquisition closed. My pen stopped. Moving them where? Laura asked. A consulting limited liability company. Blake spoke immediately. A treasury contingency. It was never executed. Miriam nodded. Correct. The draft was not executed. Then it is irrelevant. Not necessarily. The entity has a documented business connection to Mr. Reed. Samantha's head turned toward Blake. What connection? He did not look at her. Miriam answered. The consulting company's registered manager shares a prior business relationship and payment history with Mr. Reed. We are still reviewing the extent of that relationship. I stared at the draft date. Post-closing. The original $700,000 would remain parked while I sold my house, paid the company, and kept quiet. Then, after the acquisition, the old money could move again. Not back to Ellison Family Care. Away. The shape of it finally became simple enough to say, you needed me to replace it first. Blake looked at me. Do not turn an unexecuted planning draft into a confession. I did not say you confessed. Miriam stepped in. There is another document we need to discuss. A cash cleanup checklist appeared. Near the bottom sat a field. Approved for planning. S. Read. Samantha leaned closer to her screen. What is that? Blake finally looked at her. Routine post-closing reconciliation approval. You put my initials on this? You approved the planning process. Her voice sharpened. Did I approve that consulting company? No, Miriam said. The checklist does not name the consulting company. We cannot conclude from this document that Miss Reed approved that destination. Samantha sat back. Relief crossed her face for less than a second. Then Blake spoke. Planning was approved. Treasury was working within that approval. She turned toward him again. This time the pause between them felt different. Not husband and wife. Two executives realizing the same document could save only one of them. Miriam closed the file on her screen. We are not making a criminal finding today. We are documenting sequence, access, and authorization. Blake nodded stiffly. Good. Miriam looked directly at him. Then let us stay with authorization. Who authorized the draft transfer to the consulting company? Blake's eyes moved to Samantha's initials. Planning was approved, he said again. Samantha did not look at me. She looked at her husband. And for the first time since this began, I watched her understand that Blake had prepared a place for her name in the story too. Samantha asked to meet without Blake, without company counsel, and without Laura. Her message came just after 7 in the morning. 1 hour, neutral place, please. I stared at the screen while coffee dripped into a paper cup beside me. The rental kitchen smelled faintly of burnt grounds and dish soap. Outside, someone dragged a trash bin across concrete, the wheels knocking over every seam in the driveway. I sent Laura a copy of the message before answering. She called 2 minutes later. You can meet her, Laura said, but do not negotiate legal language on the spot, and do not sign anything. I wasn't planning to. People plan differently when their child is sitting across from them. That shut me up. We met at a quiet bakery halfway between my rental and Ellison Family Care. Samantha chose a table near the back, away from the register. She had already ordered coffee for both of us. Mine had cream, she remembered. For several seconds, neither of us touched the cups. Samantha looked thinner than she had on the forensic call. No makeup around her eyes, hair pulled back too tight. A folder rested beside her hand. I asked Blake not to come, she said. That was smart. Her mouth tightened. Can we not do that today? Do what? Make every sentence a test. I looked at the folder. You brought paperwork. She followed my eyes. Because I'm trying to fix something. Which part? Samantha opened the folder and slid a 2-page proposal toward me. The company would return the full $700,000 I had paid from the house sale. Payment would be accelerated instead of waiting for the review to finish. Reasonable legal expenses would be covered. There was also 6 months of condo rent while I found permanent housing. For 1 second, all I saw was the number. $700,000. Enough to stop counting motel nights and temporary leases. Enough to replace most of what I had lost, without waiting months or years for lawyers, reviewers, boards, and banks to finish arguing over records. Then I saw the last paragraph. I looked up. What do you want me to sign? Samantha folded her hands. A clarification. Of course. Dad. Read it to me. Her jaw moved once before she picked up the second page. Mr. Ellison acknowledges that Samantha Reed reasonably relied on representations made by the chief financial officer and other finance personnel, and that she did not intentionally suppress information she believed would exonerate him. She lowered the page. I waited. That's it? I asked. It says the company will reimburse you. That wasn't my question. A milk steamer hissed behind the counter. Samantha glanced toward it, then back at me. There's also language saying, I acted in good faith to protect the company during the acquisition. And Denise? What about her? The email you received before I signed. Samantha's fingers tightened around the paper. I didn't know the consulting company existed. I didn't ask that. Dad, that approval field they showed on the call was general planning. I approved post-closing reconciliation. I did not approve sending money to that limited liability company. I believe you haven't been shown to have approved that transfer. Her eyes lifted. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The coffee had gone untouched between us. I leaned forward. Did you know Denise said the dates did not support the case against me before I signed the restitution agreement? Samantha stared at the tabletop. I did not repeat myself. Finally, she said, yes. One word. No Blake. No buyer. No board. Just yes. My thumb rubbed along the rough paper sleeve around the coffee cup. So when you asked me to sign, you knew there was a problem. I knew Denise had raised a problem. She recommended an independent review. We didn't have time. You had time to sell my house. Her face pulled tight. That is not fair. Tell me what is. Samantha lowered her voice. We were days from blowing up a stock sale we had been building since January. The company needed capital for expansion and tighter margins. We had more than 180 caregivers and staff counting on us not to turn a control problem into a company-wide crisis. And I had a house. You had equity. There it was again. She hurt herself this time. Samantha looked down. I knew you could survive it, she said. My fingers stopped on the cup. You knew I could survive losing my house. I knew we could make you whole later. We? The company. Me. Whoever needed to. You didn't know where the first 700,000 was. No. You didn't know if I took it. I thought Blake had stronger evidence than Denise did. But you knew the dates were wrong. They were incomplete. Wrong enough that Denise told you not to ask me for restitution. Samantha pushed her coffee aside. Do you want me to say I chose the company? I want you to stop asking me to pretend you didn't. Her face changed then, not into anger exactly, something harder. The expression she used in board meetings when a person had become a problem to solve. If the acquisition failed, Dad, we were not talking about your comfort. We were talking about 180 people. When did I agree to lend you my name? She went still. Not my house, I said. My name. When did I tell you that if the deal needed a thief, you could use mine for a few months and fix it later? Samantha opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The bakery suddenly seemed too loud. Cups striking saucers. A chair scraping tile. Someone laughing near the front door. She turned the proposal toward me again. You can have your money back now. I looked at the signature line. And what do you get? I get the truth stated fairly. No. You get a version. That is unfair. The truth is that Denise warned you before I signed. You kept it inside finance. You let me sign anyway. Then after I challenged the story, you signed a statement saying, I admitted taking the money. You accepted responsibility. I paid money. You signed restitution. I did not confess to theft. Samantha's voice dropped. You knew what the payment meant. I knew what you told me would happen if I refused. She sat back. For a few seconds, I could see the girl who used to bring me broken toys because she believed I could fix anything with a screwdriver and patience. Then the folder between us brought me back. I'll make you an offer, I said. Samantha's eyes sharpened. You formally correct your statement. You tell the review exactly when Denise warned you. You stop asking me to protect the acquisition. I will tell the truth exactly as the records support it. No more and no less. You won't say Blake manipulated me? I can't prove what was inside your marriage. You know what he's like. I know what he did in front of me. That distinction could cost me everything. So could yours. She looked toward the window. A delivery van rolled past outside. I built that company too, Samantha said. I know. Mom wanted me to have it. She wanted you to deserve it. Her head turned back toward me. That one landed. I stood and left the proposal unsigned. By late afternoon, Laura forwarded a new filing from company counsel. Samantha had submitted a supplemental declaration to the active review. I read it at my kitchen counter. She did not withdraw the earlier statement. Instead, she wrote that I had accepted responsibility at the time of restitution, and that later objections had been encouraged by a former employee who departed under contentious circumstances. Denise. Samantha had not chosen the truth. She had chosen better wording. Laura called before I finished the second page. She had a chance to correct the record, Laura said. I know. Keep this copy. Do not respond directly. My phone buzzed while she was still speaking. A fraud alert from the bank. I opened it. A new transfer request had been submitted from the disputed savings account. Destination pending verification. I read the destination name twice. The same consulting company Miriam had identified in the review. Laura. What? Somebody just tried to move the original 700,000. Her voice sharpened. Do not approve anything. I won't. Another alert appeared. Transfer blocked due to identity theft restriction. Then my phone started ringing. Blake. Blake's name was still flashing on my phone when Laura said, "Do not answer until you know why he's calling." The bank alert sat above his name. Transfer blocked due to identity theft restriction. Destination pending verification. I stared at those words while the kitchen faucet dripped behind me. One drop at a time. The rental smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner. My palm had gone damp around the phone. Laura, the destination is the same consulting company from Miriam's review. I heard you. Call the bank first. Blake's call stopped, then started again. I let it ring while I dialed the fraud number on my case letter. After identity verification, a specialist named Aaron confirmed the request had been blocked because the account remained under an active identity theft restriction. Did you authorize any transfer today? He asked. No. Did you give anyone permission to move funds from this account? No. Did you use the recovery option attached to the profile? I did not create the account. I do not know that recovery option. Keys clicked on his end. I'm documenting that exactly. Can you tell me who submitted the transfer? I can't identify an individual. The request used the existing recovery method on the account, and the records will be preserved. That distinction mattered. It was the difference between a fact and a story. Blake called a third time before I finished writing down the case reference. This time, Laura said, "Answer. Put me on the line." I accepted and added her. Blake did not say hello. What did you do to the account? His voice had lost the polished rhythm he used in conference rooms. I reported an account opened in my name that I didn't open. You blocked company settlement funds. I glanced at Laura's silent square. Company funds? You know what I mean. No. I want to hear what you mean. Blake breathed through his nose. Money connected to the reconciliation. You told me the savings account held money I stole and concealed. That was before restitution. So after I sold my house, the same money became company settlement funds? You are twisting language. I'm repeating yours. A cabinet door slammed on his end. Then his voice dropped. Mark, if that transfer fails because of your interference, you will create a second financial problem. What transfer? You saw the alert. I saw a transfer I did not authorize. It was part of cash cleanup. Whose cash? Silence. Laura spoke. Mr. Reed, direct further discussion about the disputed account through counsel. Blake ignored her. Mark, release the restriction. No. You don't understand what you're stopping. That is probably the first true thing you've said today. He ended the call. Less than 2 hours later, Miriam requested an emergency factual conference. The bank had preserved the transfer attempt. Company counsel had preserved corporate access records from the same period. Miriam told Laura the forensic team was comparing timestamps, not guessing who had touched the keyboard. When the call opened, Samantha and Blake were already there. Miriam appeared last with a legal pad beside her. Before anyone argues motive, she said, I am going to state what we can verify. Blake folded his arms. The transfer request occurred this afternoon, Miriam continued. The bank confirms it used the recovery method attached to the disputed savings account. At the corresponding time, Ellison Family Care security records show an active Chief Financial Officer environment session associated with finance administration. Samantha turned toward Blake's window. What does that mean? It means finance was working, Blake said. That is not unusual. Miriam nodded. Correct. An active session alone does not identify who entered the bank request. Blake's shoulders loosened. Then Miriam added, the same session included access to a stored beneficiary reference matching the consulting company named in the blocked wire. The looseness disappeared. My pen stopped moving. Laura asked, is that the same entity identified in the earlier post-closing cash draft? Yes. Miriam brought up a summary. The registered contact information links the entity to a business contact previously used by Mr. Reed. Company payment records also show an earlier consulting payment approved through his finance office. Blake leaned forward. That company performed legitimate consulting work. We are not evaluating the quality of that work today, Miriam said. Samantha looked at him. Why was money from Dad's disputed account being sent there? It wasn't sent. You tried to send it. The request was part of an internal cleanup plan. My approval? You approved cleanup planning. I approved reconciling post-closing cash positions. Exactly. No. Her voice sharpened. I did not approve that company. Blake stared at her. You approved the process that required it. What required it? The buyer could not see stranded funds sitting in a disputed personal account tied to the founder. Miriam said, Mr. Reed, are you saying the funds needed to be moved before buyer review? Blake rubbed one hand over his mouth. I'm saying the balance created a problem. A problem for whom? I asked. For the company. Months earlier, the money had supposedly been mine because I stole it. Now it belonged to the company because Blake needed to move it. Samantha spoke again. If it belonged to the company, why did Dad have to sell his house? Because he had already made restitution. That does not answer me. You wanted the company whole. I wanted the missing money replaced while we figured out what happened. Blake's jaw tightened. And you got exactly that. Samantha stared at him. Miriam tried to step in. We need to keep this factual. But Blake had stopped listening. He pointed toward Samantha's camera. Do not pretend you had no idea what we were doing. You wanted the deal alive. You approved the planning. Your father already paid once. He was never going to burn you over the same money twice. Nobody spoke. The sentence seemed to remain in my speakers after Blake stopped talking. The refrigerator motor started behind me. Samantha's face went still. What did you just say? I said Mark made restitution. No, the rest. Sam, don't. You said he already paid once. Why would that make it safe to move the original money? That is not what I meant. It is exactly what you said. His voice rose. Because your father was not going to destroy you after protecting you this far. My hand closed around the pen. Not destroy Blake. Not expose the scheme. Destroy Samantha. He had built everything on one assumption. That I would keep paying for my daughter's choices. Miriam cut through them. Stop. Tree. Everyone stop. The call went quiet. I am preserving the audio record of this meeting under the engagement terms, she said. I am also preserving the blocked transfer record, recovery method information, corporate session timestamp, beneficiary access record, and consulting entity connection. Blake said, You are taking my words out of context. I have not characterized your words. You listed them beside unrelated technical events. I listed preserved records. He looked toward company counsel. The attorney answered before he spoke. The audit committee requested an independent factual review. It will continue. Blake pushed his chair back hard enough for the wheels to strike something. Miriam turned to me. Mr. Ellison, do you have a factual question before we end? I looked at the dates on my legal pad. February 2nd, February 11th, February 12th. Then today. Does this prove Blake opened the account? No, Miriam said. Blake released a short breath. Then she continued. It does not, by itself, prove who opened it. It does show who was trying to control the funds after you formally disputed ownership and after the account was restricted. Blake's face tightened again. The call ended 15 minutes later. I had barely closed my laptop when Laura's email arrived. One attachment. Mark, she said over the phone. Blake's counsel just produced the authorization he has been referring to. I opened the file. My name appeared at the bottom. So did an image of my signature. Above it, the document claimed I had instructed Blake to hold the $700,000 temporarily and transfer them later at his direction. I read the date beside my signature twice. This says, I signed it before I knew that savings account existed. Yes, Laura said. I zoomed in. Something about the form looked familiar. Not the signature. The form itself. A footer in the bottom corner carried the new Ellison Family Care logo, Samantha had approved only after my fraud dispute began. I pointed at the screen, though Laura could not see me. Laura, I see it. They used the new logo. Yes. That logo did not exist on the date they say I signed this. Her answer was quiet. Then, we finally have something we can test, without asking anyone what they remember. The authorization looked cleaner on the conference room screen than it had on my laptop. That bothered me. A document supposedly signed months ago should have carried something from its own time. An old logo, an old footer, a scanned crease. Instead, Blake's paper looked fresh. Laura sat to my right with a legal pad. Across the table were Samantha, Blake, Miriam Cole, company outside counsel, and 2 audit committee representatives. A buyer representative joined by video because the findings now touched the stock sale directly. Miriam tapped the screen. This is the authorization Mr. Reed says permitted him to hold the disputed funds in an account associated with Mr. Ellison and later move those funds at his direction. Blake folded his hands. Correct. Miriam looked at me. Mr. Ellison, do you recognize the signature image? It resembles my signature. Did you sign this document? No. Blake leaned back. Convenient. I kept my eyes on Miriam. When was the electronic file created? A second screen appeared. July 9th, Miriam said. Samantha turned toward Blake. That cannot be right. It can if the file was recreated from an older paper record, Blake said. Finance does that. Laura asked. Was an older paper record produced? Company counsel answered. No, original paper version has been located. I pointed toward the footer. When did the company start using that logo? Samantha's eyes moved to the bottom corner. She knew before Miriam answered. The current brand package was approved in June, Miriam said. This footer template was distributed internally on June 23rd. The room stayed quiet. February 7th sat at the top of a form that could not have existed until June. Blake rubbed 2 fingers along his jaw. The authorization was migrated into a current template. From what? I asked. An earlier form. Show it. Finance records were reorganized. Show the earlier form. His voice hardened. Not every document survives a system migration. Miriam did not react. The metadata also shows the signature image was inserted after the June template was created. Blake looked at company counsel. Metadata can change when files are converted. Yes, Miriam said. Which is why we are not relying on one field. We have template history, creation history, no contemporaneous source file, and no delivery record showing this authorization was sent to or received from Mr. Ellison in February. Laura placed her pen down. So the review cannot authenticate it as a February authorization. That is correct. Blake looked at me. You know you agreed to let me handle the funds. I knew you wanted me to replace them. You knew what the account was for. I learned the account existed when your wife threw it at me in a trash bag. Samantha flinched. Miriam changed the screen. A timeline appeared. January 29th. Savings account opened in my name. February 2nd. External payee linked through a Chief Financial Officer administrative path. February 11th. My dormant user restored at the request of the Chief Financial Officer office. February 12th. $700,000 transferred from operating reserve. February 16th. Denise warned Samantha that the dates did not support the accusation. February 20th. I signed the restitution agreement. March. My house sold. A second $700,000 went into Ellison Family Care. Late July. Someone tried to wire the original funds to the consulting company tied to Blake's finance activity. Miriam said. The original allegation was that Mr. Ellison restored access, added his own payee, then transferred company funds. The records do not support that sequence. The payee existed 9 days before his user was restored. Blake tapped the table. That does not prove Mark knew nothing about the account. No, Miriam said. It does not. Exactly. She continued. It also does not support the claim that he personally used his restored profile to add the payee. Miriam brought up another set of records. The bank application used Mr. Ellison's identifying information, but the recovery email was not his. The callback number corresponded to the finance office. We also have no evidence that Mr. Ellison withdrew or redirected any of the funds after they entered the savings account. Blake said, "Absence of movement proves nothing. It proves the money remained there," Laura replied. Samantha spoke. "What does this establish about me?" Miriam turned toward her. "It does not establish that you opened the account. It does not establish that you knew the consulting company would be the eventual destination." Samantha's shoulders dropped slightly. Then Miriam changed the screen again. Denise's email, my daughter's reply, and the signed statement Samantha filed after I challenged the accusation. 3 documents, side by side. On February 16th, Miriam said, "Denise Harper warned you that the chronology did not support the conclusion being used against your father and recommended independent review." Samantha nodded. "Yes." You replied, "Keep this inside finance for now. Dad signs Friday. We cannot blow everything up before then." "Yes." 4 days later, Mr. Ellison signed restitution. "Yes." After he disputed the account, you signed a statement saying he had acknowledged temporarily taking company funds. Samantha looked toward me. I believed he had accepted responsibility. I asked, "Where did I say I stole it?" Her lips parted. No answer. "Show me one email," I said. "One recording. One sentence with my name under it. You paid the money." "That is not a confession," Blake interrupted. Everyone understood what restitution meant. I turned toward him. "Then you need a new authorization in July." His face tightened. Miriam raised one hand. "We have a separate question regarding the money." 2 transfer lines appeared. The original $700,000 left Ellison Family Care and went into the disputed account. My House Proceeds later sent another $700,000 into Ellison Family Care. Miriam said, "There is no record showing the first transfer was reversed before Mr. Ellison made the second payment." Laura asked, "And the blocked July request?" "The request sought to move the original funds to the consulting company already identified in the post-closing cash draft." Blake shook his head. "That was cleanup." Samantha turned toward him. "You keep calling it cleanup. Why was Dad's money being moved into a company connected to you?" "It was not Dad's money." Blake seemed to realize what he had said a second too late. Samantha leaned forward. "Then whose was it?" "Company money." "If it was company money, why did we make him sell his house to replace it?" "Because at the time, the evidence showed he took it. And after he paid, we had to resolve the stranded balance. By sending it to your consultant? By moving it where it could be reconciled." Samantha's voice went low. "You told me that account was proof Dad hid the money. It was evidence. You told me we could not touch it until after he made restitution." Blake stared at her. Miriam stopped writing. "So did Laura." Blake said, "You approved keeping the deal alive. I approved keeping the company alive. You approved keeping Mark quiet." Samantha's face lost what little color it had. "No. Yes. Denise warned you, and you buried it. You told me the rest of the evidence was solid, and you wanted to believe me because the alternative killed your deal." Samantha pointed at him. "I never approved stealing from my father." Blake gave a short laugh. "No. You approved using him until closing. You just thought we were going to put him back together afterward." No confession had arrived. Something worse had. Each of them was using the truth against the other, and every sentence cut another piece out of the story they had used against me. Company counsel finally spoke. "That is enough." He turned toward the audit committee representatives, then the buyer's video window. "Based on the current record, the transaction cannot proceed on the representations presently in the sale materials. The audit committee will receive the complete factual report. Records relevant to suspected financial misconduct will be preserved and referred through the appropriate process." Blake pushed back from the table. "You are killing a company over a family dispute." The audit committee chair answered him. "No. We are stopping a transaction because we cannot rely on the financial representations." Samantha looked down at her hands. I gathered my papers. Outside the conference room, my shoes sounded too loud against the polished floor. The elevator was halfway down when Samantha called my name. "Dad." I kept walking until she caught up near the glass doors. Her breathing was uneven. "If they take everything," she said. "The deal, my position, the house, if this gets worse, are you really going to let them?" My hand rested on the cold metal door bar. For years, that question would have answered itself. This time, I turned around. "No," I said. "I'm not going to stop them from following the records." Samantha's face tightened as if I had closed a door on her. "They could take my position. You knew that when you signed a statement saying I confessed. I was trying to keep the company alive, and I was trying to keep my name." She looked past me toward the conference room. Blake was still inside with counsel. One hand braced on the table. "What about the house?" she asked. I thought of my own front porch, the worn spot on the second stair, Ruth's coffee mug packed in a storage box because I no longer had the kitchen where she used it. "You told me I had assets," I said. "So do you." Samantha's mouth opened, but I pushed through the glass doors before she answered. The audit committee suspended Blake that afternoon. Not fired. Suspended. His banking access, company email, and finance credentials were disabled while the review continued. Samantha was placed on administrative leave 2 days later after Miriam's team finished comparing her declarations with the preserved email chain. The board put interim management over daily operations, and payroll, caregiver schedules, and client visits continued while the review moved forward. Nobody came out of the building in handcuffs. That would have been simpler. Instead, lawyers sent letters. Banks preserved records. The buyer extended its pause once, then terminated the stock purchase after the audit committee disclosed that the financial representations supporting the deal could no longer be relied upon. Samantha called the night the termination became official. I almost let it go to voicemail. "Dad," she said when I answered. The buyer walked. "I heard. You knew they would." I knew it was possible. Her voice sounded far away, flattened by the phone. "Do you know what that does to the value of my shares?" "Yes." A quiet laugh came through. Not amusement. "Of course you do." "Sam." "No, it's fine. You got what you wanted." I looked at the bank statement still locked in the fireproof case Laura had told me to buy. "What I wanted was not to be called a thief. You could have corrected that without tearing apart everything Mom built. You had that choice before I sold my house." The line went silent. When Samantha spoke again, her voice was lower. "I kept thinking we could fix you later." My hand tightened around the phone. "There it is. I know how it sounds. It sounds exactly like what happened." She began to say my name, then stopped. For once, neither of us tried to rescue the conversation. The original $700,000 never reached Blake's consulting contact. The bank restriction held, and after the ownership dispute and company claim were sorted through counsel, the money was returned to Ellison Family Care under a documented recovery agreement. My $700,000 was a separate issue. Laura would not let anyone blur them again. Months passed before my own payment was resolved. Ellison Family Care's board negotiated with me through counsel after the original company funds were recovered. My house could not be returned because the buyers had done nothing wrong and owned it free of my family's mess. So the settlement came in money. The full restitution payment I had made from my sale proceeds came back to me, along with agreed legal costs and an additional amount tied to the false accusation and the way the company had obtained my payment. Laura made me read every page twice. "No confidentiality clause that prevents you from denying the theft," she said. "Good. No statement saying Samantha acted reasonably. Better. And no language saying this restores your house." I looked at her. "It doesn't." She nodded. "Then sign only if you can live with what it actually does." I signed. For the first time since I had sat across from Blake's gray folder, a document bearing my name said something true. I had not stolen the money. As part of the settlement and governance review, Samantha signed a formal correction withdrawing her claim that I had admitted taking company funds. She acknowledged that Denise had warned her about the chronology before I signed the restitution agreement. The board issued its own written correction to the internal record. My restitution was reclassified as a disputed payment, returned after the investigation found that the original accusation was not supported by the access and transaction evidence. It was dry language. Beautifully dry. Blake's problems moved more slowly. The forensic report went to the company's counsel, the bank, and the authorities handling the referral. I was interviewed twice. Denise was interviewed separately. Miriam's firm turned over authenticated records through the proper requests. Nobody asked me to guess what Blake had been thinking. They asked about dates, the account opening, the finance callback number, the beneficiary enrollment, my disabled profile, the transfer, the false authorization created months after its claimed signing date, the blocked wire, one fact after another. By late fall, Blake had been charged with financial offenses tied to the use of my identity, the company transfer, and the later attempt to move the funds. Laura warned me not to treat charges as a conviction. I didn't. The following spring, he entered a negotiated guilty plea to fraud-related counts. The court process continued after that, with sentencing and restitution handled on their own schedule. I did not attend every hearing. There was nothing in that courtroom I needed to see badly enough to build my life around him. The marriage did not survive. Samantha filed for divorce after the company removed Blake permanently from his finance position. Their house went on the market months later. Legal fees, personal guarantees connected to financing, and the collapse in the value of her company stake had turned the place into something she could no longer carry comfortably. She did not go to prison. That mattered to me, because the truth mattered. The evidence showed she had ignored Denise's warning, pushed me into restitution, signed a false account of what I had admitted, and tried to protect the transaction after she knew the accusation had a serious hole in it. It did not show she opened the savings account or designed Blake's original plan. Ellison, Family Care, removed her as chief executive. She kept whatever ownership rights survived under the company agreements, but control was gone. So was the acquisition payday she had protected at my expense. About 9 months after the trash bag hit my feet, a padded envelope arrived with Samantha's handwriting on the front. Inside was Ruth's missing cuff button and a folded note. Dad, no money, no Blake, no company. If you ever want to talk, I'll start with what I did. I rolled the button between my fingers. One small piece of Ruth's shirt, found only because Samantha had finally packed a house she could no longer afford to keep. I read the note once more, then set it beside Ruth's flannel shirt. I did not call Samantha that night. Maybe one day I would, but if we spoke again, she would have to begin with the choice she made before I sold my house, not with what Blake did afterward. After she went home, I drove to my storage unit. Ruth's red flannel shirt was still folded inside a plastic bin, beside the gray allegation folder and the clean evidence container holding the torn trash bag. The legal hold had been released weeks earlier. Laura had told me I could keep the bag if I wanted. For a while I did. Then I understood why. I had been keeping the moment Samantha threw it at me, because part of me still needed proof that it had happened. I took the bank statement and Denise's note out first. Those went into the fireproof case with the settlement and the board's correction. Ruth's shirt came home with me. The trash bag did not. I carried it to the dumpster behind the storage building. The plastic was thinner than I remembered, torn down one side, worth nothing. Before dropping it in, I found the small white label Samantha had stuck near the knot. DAD. One word. I peeled it off and held it for a second. Then I dropped the label with the bag and closed the lid. My phone stayed silent as I walked back to the car. Samantha's note was in my pocket. I did not owe her an answer that day. If we spoke again, it would be because she was ready to tell the truth without asking me to absorb the cost. You can love your family deeply and still refuse to pay for their choices with your home, your savings, your reputation, or your peace. That is one of the hardest lessons to learn, because family pressure rarely arrives looking like theft. It often comes dressed as urgency. Someone tells you the business will collapse, the children will suffer, the marriage will fail, or the whole family will be embarrassed unless you sacrifice something right now. You are told that you are the only person strong enough to fix it. Sometimes that sounds like love. Sometimes it is simply a way to make you carry a burden that belongs to someone else. When money is involved, slow down. Ask for records. Read every page before you sign it. Keep copies of bank statements, contracts, emails, texts, and anything that shows what was said and when it was said. If someone tells you there is no time for an independent review, that may be exactly when you need one most. Honest decisions can survive questions. Honest people may dislike being questioned, but they do not need you confused. And if the accusation comes from someone you love, do not let shame decide for you. Being a parent does not mean accepting blame just to protect an adult child from consequences. You can help without lying. You can support someone without surrendering your name. You can say, "I will stand beside you while the truth is examined, but I will not confess to something I did not do." That sentence may save more than money. There is another lesson too. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You may eventually forgive someone because you do not want to carry the weight forever. That does not mean you must restore the relationship to what it was. Trust is not repaired by one apology, one check, or one tearful conversation. It is rebuilt through repeated choices, especially when telling the truth costs something. You also have the right to admit that some losses cannot be reversed. A house can be sold to an innocent buyer. A family business can lose value. A marriage can collapse. Years of trust may not return. A legal settlement can replace money, but it cannot recreate the kitchen where your spouse once stood, or erase the day your child chose convenience over your dignity. Accepting that does not mean you lost. It means you stop demanding that the past become something it can no longer be. So ask yourself this. If someone in your family pressured you to sacrifice your savings or your home to protect them from a scandal, would you do it without seeing the full truth? If your own child asked you to stay quiet because exposing the facts might cost them everything, where would you draw the line? And if someone you loved betrayed you, then later admitted what they had done, would you forgive them, keep your distance, or require them to earn their way back into your life? Whatever your answer is, remember this much. Love should not require you to disappear. Family should not need your silence to survive. And protecting the people you love should never require you to help them hide what they chose to do.